Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss the legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedoms and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties, education, and legal defense organization. Join us now as Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country. In the courtrooms of America, Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedoms.
Continuing our discussion about the Ten Commandments and their influence on American law and government, we'll finish up with the commandments today. I'm Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel. Joining me is Shawn Akers, the vice president of Middle Eastern Affairs for Liberty Counsel. Shawn, we've gone through a number of the commandments, and now we're on commandment number 8, talking about their influence on American law and government. And it's part of our booklet called The 10 Commandments in American Law and Government that you can order by going to lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. But the 8th commandment is the commandment, thou shalt not steal. And, of course, this is too numerous to trace through history as well. But if you look at some of this, James Kent, who's the father of American jurisprudence, in other words, the father of our modern legal system, he wrote this: to overturn justice by plundering others tended to destroy civil society and violate the law of nature and the institutions of heaven. He's speaking about this commandment. And it goes on to say that, not only have the laws of this commandment influenced stealing, but they've also influenced, obviously, theft, which derives from the 8th commandment, but also laws protecting, believe it or not, the integrity of elections. The elections integrity and even the U.S. takings clause, and we cite references to that, are based upon and flow out of this commandment, thou shalt not steal.
You know, Matt, this is fascinating to me. There is a two-dimensional application of it that says, okay, I see where we get the criminal aspect of U.S. laws, but there's also a much larger one. When you look at writers like Frederic Bastiat and this idea of plunder, then you've got something that's truly fascinating. When you talk about the takings clause, what they're concerned about here is the application of the 8th commandment not to individuals but to the United States government. So many of the discussions that we have today are over when government can take money and take resources from one individual and give them to another. And writers like Bastiat, on this very basis, on the basis of the 8th commandment, or their similar ideas, would have said, look, this is the government itself that's stealing. And they would use the same terminology that was used here. They would call it plunder.
Well, the 9th commandment, you're absolutely right. The 9th commandment is the commandment about not bearing false witness. And what do you think that forms the foundation of?
Yeah, absolutely.
It forms the very foundation of the entire judicial system, taking the oaths and being truthful. It is the foundation of our system, and it was adopted throughout many eras of our history. And in one, the Oregon Supreme Court said this: no official is above the law. Thou shalt not bear false witness is a command of the Decalogue, and that forbidden act is denounced by the statute as a felony. And this is a modern decision from the Oregon Supreme Court. The 10th commandment is the commandment about not coveting. And John Adams, our first vice president, second president, talked about property rights, and he stated, if thou shalt not covet and thou shalt not steal were not commandments of heaven, they must be made inviolable, precepts in every society before it can be civilized or made free. You know, John Quincy Adams says, the law given on Sinai was a civil and municipal as well as a moral and religious code. It's amazing. He's the son of John Adams and our sixth president of the United States. And listen to this by the Florida Supreme Court. A decision in 1950. It says, a people unschooled about the sovereignty of God, the 10 Commandments, and the ethics of Jesus could never have evolved the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution.
Wow.
There is not one solitary fundamental principle of our democratic policy that did not stem directly from the basic moral concepts as embodied in the Decalogue. Close quote. I mean, isn't this amazing material?
Matt, not only is it amazing to read here, but the way that this little booklet lays it out. I'll tell you what strikes me is that you could compare this to nations that have not adopted these. When the 8th commandment is not adopted and nations steal from each other, when the 9th commandment is not adopted and truth gives way to bribery, when it's the truth is whatever we say it is and people will testify anything. There are many, many societies that operate exactly like that. And the 10th commandment, in so many, covetousness, Matt, is at the basis of any Marxist movement.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing is that exactly, this Florida quote is fantastic, that because our people were steeped in these, we were able to come to something as beautiful as the Declaration of Independence that brings true liberty to people and stands in stark contrast to the Marxist, Leninist nations that admittedly are proudly godless and have rejected the very things that made the United States great.
And so all this litigation to remove the Ten Commandments is really a strike at the very heart of who we are as Westerners, Western civilization, and certainly Americans, and our Western, our moral values, because it was so influential and so significant into who we are. And thus you see it in our laws. You see it manifested in our symbols. If you go to look at the Declaration of Independence in the nation's capital at the National Archives, you have to first cross by Moses and the Ten Commandments. Right. You have to first go, before you get there, you're going to see Moses and the Ten Commandments on the floor there in the bronze. Moses is the only, or it's the Ten Commandments actually that's on the bronze on the floor. And Moses, when you go to the U.S. House of Representatives, you have profiles of everyone all the way around the top of the building. Moses is the only one facing you forward, and he's over the Speaker of the House's seat. Everyone else is a profile. Moses is in the central place. If you go to the United States Supreme Court, there's about 50 displays of the Ten Commandments in and outside of the building. It's the most predominant display by far of any other singular display in the Supreme Court, and that was built in the 1920s.
You know, Matt, when you look at it from that perspective, the attack on the Ten Commandments is not just an attack on a document, it's an attack on the history of a people and an attack on who we are as a people. And you have to wonder if someone wants so desperately to change who we are, to change our history, what would we be trading it for? What's the alternative to this? Because you see, the way that you've laid this out here, the Ten Commandments is not just an argument over a tradition or the traditional display of some traditional document. These are the substantive bases for the ideas that gave birth to a nation.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think what you ultimately see, too, is beyond our law and our morality and the monotheism and all the different policies and governing of our countries and manifested in law, manifested in symbols. Even the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has as its symbol for the entire Circuit Court of Appeals, the one that ultimately ruled at one time it was overturned that the Pledge of Allegiance is unconstitutional, has the Ten Commandments as part of its seal. But you also have our common sayings. And you can go to Google and go to the scholars section of Google and type in, quote, 10 Commandments, close quote. And it'll pull up, when I first did it, it pulled up about 15,000. Now it'll pull up about 40,000 journal articles that begin with or have the 10 Commandments in their title. And it may be the 10 Commandments of repairing your basement, the 10 Commandments of gardening. You can go to the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, and there on the website they used to have, I don't know if they still do today, the 10 Commandments of oral argument. Why did we use the 10 Commandments as part of our common vernacular? Because it symbolizes the rule of law. If you want to accomplish this, here are the 10 basic steps to accomplish it. The 10 basic steps to rebuilding your basement, 10 steps to oral argument, 10 steps to gardening, 10 steps to success. It's because the 10 Commandments, or as the Hebrews would say, the 10 words, have been profoundly influenced and have influenced our law and our life.
You know, Matt, that is absolutely fascinating. What a fascinating approach to the Ten Commandments themselves. That could be an entirely different, an additional discussion, viewing them not as 10 limitations, 10 caps on human activity, but this is really where God said, here are the 10 things. You do these are the 10 bases for good society.
And in fact, they're not the cap. If you want to have the 10 best ways to rebuild your basement, it's not how you're going to be limited or constrained. Right. It's how to do the best best job. And that's what the Ten Commandments are, to live to the fullest.
Fascinating.
Give us a call at Liberty Counsel, 1-800-671-1776, and we've got this booklet, The Ten Commandments in American Law and Government. It is a fascinating discovery and a fascinating read. I would encourage you to have some discussions about that with your children. And basically, you can also bring up this little book that you can order as well, the New England Primer, 107 questions in the Catechism, 40 of which are the Ten Commandments. This was taught in American public schools along with the alphabet, so you can order the New England Primer and also the Ten Commandments in Law and Government. Call us at 1-800-671-1776 or go online at lc.org.
You have been listening to Matt Staver of Liberty Counsel. We hope that we have motivated you to stand up for your faith, family, and freedoms. We can accomplish a lot when we work together. Get informed and get involved today. Sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Liberator. We will send it out to you free of charge. Stay informed with our Liberty Alert email updates. Just click on the website at www.lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. Tune in next time to learn more about your rights right here on Faith and Freedom.